up, everyone? My name is Erica O, and I'm introducing you to the podcast Mental Pro Mindset Show. So here we're going to be tapping into mental performance with each guest, understanding how the athletes experience from that mental performance side. So on this podcast, we're going to dive into authentic conversations here about life in sport. So I have a very special guest today, and we'll be able to hear his unique story shared through the experience that he has gone through in the life and career of his sport. So as we go through these stories, we're going to explore an acronym. So the acronym is TRIP. It's T for transitions, R for relationships, I for injury, and P for performance. So as we're going through this athlete experience, the acronym is going to help us understand that grit and the resilience as each athlete is pushing through those challenges, those difficulties as they have overcome those situations in their life as an athlete. So we'll talk about different strategies that may have helped you get through some of those difficulty points in your career and just realizing how you enjoyed that ride. So we're going to take this trip, this athlete trip, and have a real conversation here with a very, very, very special guest. So honored to introduce Mr. Anthony Toney.
Oh, thank
He's
you.
an NFL player with the Philadelphia Eagles and was a collegiate athlete at Texas A&M. He was a Hartnell Panther. Got to put a shout out to the Panthers here
always.
locally, Salinas, California. Born and raised North High Viking athlete, track runner, football player. Just so honored and really thankful for you being here as my guest. And I would love to introduce you. If you can share a little bit about yourself. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, first, I'd like to say thank you for having me, and excited to do this with you and just go through some of the things that I went through. It was, like you said, growing up here in Salinas, born and raised, just involved with sports growing up, period. And then went to North High, played there, and then, had scholarship offers to go to a major college out of high school, but I really didn't feel like I wanted to make that commitment because I really just played football because it was a way for me to hang out with my friends. So I went to Hartnell, played there for 2 years, and still kept getting scholarship offers. And then that's when I accepted the scholarship and went to Texas A&M, where I was there, played. Was lucky enough to play there and get drafted to the Eagles in the second round. And then I played 5 years with the Eagles before, I injured my hamstring my 6th year there, and didn't make the team that year. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Every year you have to make the team. And so I had like an injury the second practice of my 6th year of trying out with the Eagles, and just couldn't get out on the field to be able to compete for a position, and was released. Came home and started working to try to get my leg back to where I felt, it was healed up and everything. And I had teams that were calling me to try out, and I would tell my agent, I'm just going to retire. My leg is not 100%. And so, you asked me before we got onto the program about if it was just the Eagles that I played with. And I had actually signed a 3-year contract with the 49ers. And the whole thing was, if my leg felt good, I would go ahead and try to see if I could make the team. If it didn't, then I would retire, because I had already kind of made that decision that I was going to retire. So did that, worked out with them for a couple months, went to training camp, and I just didn't feel like my leg was strong enough to be able to play to where I was going to be able to do what I was required to do. So then I made the decision to retire from that point, and never regretted it. Because I just felt like it was the right thing to do.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that insight. You jumped right ahead to what that piece of advice and information to, really those that are in that point in their career, understanding, what are some of the difficulties that are facing with, the injury. I heard a lot of transitions too. And that was, as you were talking about that journey from the junior college to the collegiate, Texas A&M, big college, you were there back in the 80s, and then into the NFL. I'm going to back up just a little if we can talk about how things were for you growing up in Salinas and being, given that opportunity to be able to go into a collegiate, big school, Texas A&M, Aggies, they're highly recognized. And so especially for their athletic program, what helped you transition? And so that's going to be the letter of our conversation today.
Well, the transition was the players on the team were accepting when I came out there. And I think one of the other things was that a few of the coaches that were there at Texas A&M, they were at some of the schools that recruited me out of high school. So it was going into a program where you're familiar with some people. And then for me, the size of the school and the city were about the same size as Salinas was at that time. So I didn't feel like I left a small town going to the great big city. So that helped make the transition a lot easier for me. But really it was the coaching staff and my teammates that made that transition really smooth.
Yeah, definitely. So having that support from your coaches, and also knowing and recognizing within yourself that you want to have something that's comparable and similar to the environment that you're familiar with here locally, and then making that decision. How exciting is that to be able to go into a Texas A&M and continue on with your football career there? Yeah,
well, it was one of those things where, you talk about your academic trip.
Yeah.
So the second day or third day of practice, I had a knee injury. And so right then, some of those doubts start getting into your mind. Is everything going to be okay? Is the injury going to heal? Once it heals, am I going to be able to perform good enough to be able to play on the team? So I ended up having, they went in to do arthroscopic surgery on it. And they thought I had torn ligaments. And when they opened it up, it was just strained ligaments. So they closed it back. And then I just started working out with the strength and conditioning coach. And Coach Sherrill, who was our head coach, one day he called me over and he said, hey, the doctor said that you're good to go. If you want to play this year, you can play. He goes, but we would like for you to sit out this year, because next year we're going to be better, and the year after that we're going to be even better, and we want you to be a part of that team. So that right there was big to me, because they were telling me they wanted me to be a part of that team. They thought that I could help make the program a better, program than it had been. And that really happened. We that third year, the year that I would have been gone already if I hadn't redshirted, we ended up winning the championship and going to the Cotton Bowl, which was the first time that Texas A&M had done that since 1968, and this was 1985. So, being mentally prepared to come back from an injury started right after I got there.
Yeah. And what helped you set yourself up for that mental preparation, as we are here talking about the mental performance and just that mindset of being in the zone as you are at the high performance and that level that you were in your career at that point? You mentioned, those doubts that come into your mind, those thoughts that, could get in the way and really just put that roadblock. Was there anything specific that helped you overcome?
Well, it was definitely the coaching staff, and then it was definitely my teammates, because I went in with a group of guys that I am still friends with today, and there was never any, what do you say? It was competition, but it wasn't a bad kind of competition. We all kind of pushed each other, and we encouraged each other to do better. And I think if it hadn't been guys like that, that would have made it a lot tougher. But it felt like we all wanted to see each other do well, and we all ended up doing pretty well in the program. And I think 5 of the running backs I went in with went to the pros.
Wow.
So it just proved if you mentally are prepared for the competition, that you can still succeed.
Absolutely. And
So,
and mentally preparing yourself, not only you start first telling yourself, whatever it is that motivation and that, those words that help you get through, but also, the external pieces are so important. Like you were describing, that healthy empowerment to be able to get yourself
yeah.
and your teammate to that next
And it's
level.
just you, believing in yourself and you willing to put in the work that you know it's going to take. When I was working out with our strength and conditioning coach, Bert Jones, it wasn't easy. Guys would rather go to practice than have to go with Coach Jones because he was a guy that worked you, made sure you got where you needed to be able to compete. So it's mentally getting up every day, knowing that you got to go in and get treatment, knowing that you got to go to classes, and then knowing that you got to go to practice that day. And you're either working out with the team or you're working out with the strength and conditioning coach to get you ready to get back on the field with the team. And you go into the meetings every day. So you're mentally preparing yourself by watching film, learning your plays, and then the coach is going over everything with you. So when you do go back on the field, you do have that confidence that you know what you're doing and you can handle your assignments.
Yeah. And as you were describing the assignments on the field and
And
off the
off the
field.
field, yeah.
Being able to study, you're there as a collegiate athlete. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what were some of the pressures that you had as a collegiate athlete?
Well, it was one, dealing with some guys that when you come from Salinas, North High, Hartnell, and you're like the best player on your team, and then you go to a collegiate team where all of these guys were the best guys on their team, and some of them were the best guys in the state, and you're competing against them. It's just kind of like, okay, we've got to be mentally prepared to go out and just keep pushing and keep doing the best you can and showing up on time, knowing what's expected of you. But, it's up to you to get it done. They're not going to hold your hand. So you're not a kid anymore. You're right there where you're becoming a grown up, a grown man. So you're the one responsible for getting to practice. You're the one responsible for getting to those classes. You're the one making sure that you pass those classes so that you're eligible to play for your team. So, all of that is tied into it.
Right. Yeah, definitely having all these responsibilities and knowing what it takes to keep pushing forward
yeah.
and keep, reaching that goal that you are
Yeah.
there to work for. So as your mindset just seems so strong in these, changes that were happening in your life. Did you have any strategies that helped you, get up that morning? You knew that you had to go work hard. We talk about mindfulness, being in the moment, just making sure that, you're kind of like with horses, with the blinders on, you're, staying focused, staying in your lane and being able to really, be present to what's at hand, that
Yeah.
task at hand, being able to really focus on what you're there to do. We also talk about visualization as an athlete, being able to really, see through what some of the things that are going through. We've had conversations about, listening to music just to help you really
yeah.
get you through the day-to-day struggles or right, just those goals that you have set out for yourself.
Yeah, because like for myself, I wasn't one of those players that came into the locker room, was making a lot of noise, making people laugh or anything like that. I would get my playbook, I would go to my locker, I would study it, and then, after a few minutes or after an hour or so, then we get called up and we go through everything together as an offense, and then we go down to the field, and you're going out there and you're stretching and you're just mentally getting prepared for the game. And I remember one evening, me and Keith Byers were at dinner, and somebody came up and they go, "Are you ever scared?" And then we're like, "No, we're not scared." They go, "Are you nervous?" I go, "Nervous every game until the first hit." And you learn that that's what it is for you. But not everybody's like that, but that's how it was for me. I could play, 10 years and every game nervous like it was the first time I was ever going to play until the first hit. And it's like, okay, now we're playing. And, and it's funny because people say, "Were you scared?" You're not scared. you're very intense. You're thinking about the job that's coming up that you have to do, and you're making sure that you're prepared to do it. So, you know, you really just have to have your way of preparing yourself, because not everybody prepares the same way.
Yes.
You know, I would listen to music while I was reading my playbook, and then some other guys would just walk around and be singing without headphones on or anything. But it's just because that's the way they got loose. They got mentally prepared for the game, was being relaxed more that way. I was more intense on trying to make sure I was ready when the game started.
Yeah, and you have this calm presence about yourself too. I can tell that, you know, just even going into, you know, the nervousness of a game and feeling those feelings internally. It just seems like you have this really cool and collective way of handling things.
I think it's my personality is that I've never been like a really loud guy. I've always been that guy that's like, okay, he's here. We don't know if he's going to say anything, but he's here. And then it's like, for the game, he's here. We'll give him the ball. We're going to see what he's going to do. He's not going to be saying, give me the ball, give me the ball. He's not asking for all the attention, but he's a team player, and he's going to do what it takes to help his team get better.
Absolutely. And so what helped you persevere?
Just working. Just working. And my mindset was always, if I'm going into something, if I'm making that commitment, I'm going to give it 100%. So when I talked about leaving high school and going to Hartnell, because I didn't want to take a scholarship and not be 100% into playing football, somewhere where it wasn't where I was playing because I was just playing because I was playing with my friends. It was, they're giving you a scholarship. You had a responsibility to do the best you can when you're at that school, because you want to be making sure that you're honoring your agreement with them. So for me, that was a very big part, and that was the reason why I didn't take a scholarship out of high school, was because I didn't know how serious I wanted to be about football if it wasn't just because I was playing to hang out with my friends. So.
Was there something that changed for you where you said, okay, it clicked and realized this is what I want to do?
Well, when I was after my second year at Texas A&M, and we had training camp. Well, we had spring training, and after spring training is over, then the coaches will have individual meetings with each one of their players at their positions. And Coach Jim Helms was my running back coach, and so he was talking to me, and he said, "You'll play on Sundays." And I had never really thought about that. I wasn't even sure what he meant. And then I said, "Play on Sundays?" He says, "Yeah, you'll play pro football." And so I was like, "Oh, okay." And I had really never thought about it. I was just, today you deal with today, tomorrow you deal with tomorrow. I wasn't thinking next year I could be playing in the NFL. At that time I wasn't. But once he told me that, of course that was in my mind. But I still just approached every day like, give it your best shot when you're at practice, give it your best shot when you're in the game, and just keep trying to do the best you can do.
Yeah, and respecting, it sounds like you respected him as a coach.
Oh, yeah.
When he said, he mentioned that to you, you took it pretty seriously.
Yeah, he was, at that time, he had like some of the top running backs in the NFL that were in college when he was coaching, and had coached some of the guys. So it's kind of like, man, this guy coached this guy, he coached that guy, he coached that guy, and now he wants to coach me. He's saying that he thinks I'm a person that can help their team get better. And so he helped build that confidence in you because you knew who he had coached. So it was like, wow, I'm getting a chance to get coached by this guy. So it turned out to work out really well for me.
Yeah. As we know. Yeah. And so we transition into your NFL career, and take us back to that journey on what that was like as you went from collegiate into the NFL.
And people always ask me, what's the difference between college and professional? When you get to professional, at least back then, it was going from just being an athlete and a student to being a professional where you're getting paid. So now they bring in so many guys to try out for the team, and they cut almost half of those guys. So it's like, it's not 100 and something guys you keep on the roster, so you don't have to worry about getting cut. Now you go in, you're trying for position. If you make that team, then you have a job for that year.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, then you try to see where your other opportunity is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a real job. You get up, you go to work, you finish work, you go home, just like people working a regular 9 to 5. And a lot of people don't realize that you go from living, with, 70, 80 guys to living by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You go from having college coaches, making sure you're going to your class and making sure you're showing up to practice every day, to NFL coaches just saying, hey, you need to be here. You need to be here on time. You need to be making an effort. So it's totally different thinking, and you have some friends, and then 2 or 3 days later, you don't see that person anymore because for some reason he may have gotten traded to another team, or he may have gotten released by your team. So in college, it's like, oh, Johnny's 5 doors down,
Right.
and he's been 5 doors down for 3 days, for 3 years. So it's that whole living situation is different. Your whole responsibility is different because now you go from not having to worry about rent, food. Now you're paying rent. You're having to buy and cook your own food. So it changes, and you got to be mentally prepared to deal with that kind of stuff also.
Yeah, definitely. The independence comes in the way
Yeah.
of recognizing what I got to do for myself
Yeah.
to take care of myself and still
And
fight and focus.
understanding that it's a business. Nowadays it's more, college is just like a business now because you have the NIL stuff. So guys are getting paid. It wasn't like that when I was there. So it was like you worked a summer job, saved much of that money as you could so you could make it last during the school year. Now you got guys getting $1 million contracts, in college.
Yes.
It's a lot different.
Yeah, and so the pressure, it is different now, but there's still that pressure that you felt, throughout the NFL career, keeping your position. How was that a challenge, and how did you feel about, what situation you were facing as you were trying to fight for your position?
Well, most of my career I was a starting player on our team, and I had broken hand. I had Achilles injury. So sometimes it was trying to come back from those injuries to being able to stay on the field and playing because you had other athletes who were good athletes that were out there playing and working hard too. So mentally, you just say, what do I need to do to get better? How do I prepare myself to get back out there on the field? And I don't think that's, for me, that was never something hard to try to do, is be mentally prepared for that. It's those outside things that you more have to watch out for. If people are trying to, when you're a professional, athlete, people want you to come make an appearance over here, come and do this, do that. And you have to make sure that you keep your mind where it's supposed to be. Why are you there? And it's to make that team, help that team be better. But also, it's a way that you're providing for your family. So for me, that was the biggest, draw for me, was I have an opportunity to help my family. And
it's like you're reading my notes. That's my next question. Pressure from family, any external pressure that you were receiving. How was that for you? Coming from a small town, as we make that connection back to Salinas, California, now 150,000 people.
Yes.
But back then about 80,000 people, and just having that external pressure from family, your community, just what was that like, more financially than anything?
Well, I was able to, help my family financially. When I was growing up in Salinas, we moved almost every year because, we weren't rich or anything like that. And one of my goals was to make sure I could get my mom into a house. And she's been living in that house for 34 years now. My brothers and sisters, my youngest brothers and sisters, they didn't go to like a different school every year. They were able to go to the same school, get finished, which I thought was very important as far as is their education, because it's more stable. So that was one of the biggest driving forces for me. And I was, determined. I said, after 4 years, I'm out. And I actually went to Coach Buddy Ryan and told him that, I was going to retire after my 4th year. And he's like, no, wait a minute, let's think about this. And so I ended up signing another 3-year contract, and I played one more year, and then that year after that's when I had the injury and then ended up retiring.
Okay. And so how did you come to that decision at that point? You're so focused and determined, just the way that you've gone into those decision-making points, really pivotal in your lifetime, where the distractions have been, so much that has gotten in the way of many athletes, struggling to keep that mindset. Just as you describe, you're so methodical, like stay focused, stay, determined as far as what you want to achieve and reach those goals, even when there are some difficulties as you're facing an injury, getting ready to, make that life-changing decision to retire. Was there anything that helped you go through that change?
Well, once I made the decision to retire, it was, for me, I felt like it was the right thing. When I actually did retire, I never said, oh, I should have played another year. I should have played 2 more years. When I made that decision, I felt like that was the decision for me. And I had already had a job. Somebody had offered me a job, said, hey, when you finish playing, you can come work with us. And so I went and I worked with that company for about 1.5 years. And then I went and I started working with the Boys and Girls Club. One of my teammates, Ron Johnson, was working there, and I would go over sometimes and hang out, stuff like that, and we would do our football camp, and we'd make sure that the kids from the Boys and Girls Club were able to get there and participate in it. And then Ron was like, we need to get you on the staff. And so I ended up working there for 22 years. And I think that right there was probably the most important work I've ever done. And I can actually say that was what I felt I got the most from, because you're working with these young kids and you see some of the backgrounds that they come from, and you try to help them, and you want them to be able to go out into life after they leave that Boys and Girls Club and be able to contribute to their community, but also make a living for themselves. And so I did that for 22 years, and it was great. And I think that part of it made it easy for me to move on too, because that was something I felt like I was called to get involved with.
Yeah, giving back to others, and also, seems like your philosophy and things is seeing the opportunity. There are mistakes and failures in life that happen, and you're just noticing as an opportunity. And giving back to the community, full circle, coming back to the community, giving back at the Boys and Girls Club. You have a big heart.
Well, and the thing I always felt was one of the big things that helped me get into that mode of working with kids was when I would come home from A&M, the coaches at North High, Coach Milner, Coach Bagul, they would say, hey, we got this kid, he's a good athlete, but he doesn't go to class. Can you talk to him? And so I would be talking to these kids, and it just kind of fell into where it was kind of natural. When I was in Philadelphia, I was part of a Say No to Drugs program with the New Jersey State Troopers, and I would go to schools and talk to kids, stuff like that. So it just kind of fell right into place when I left the NFL and started going over and hanging out with Ron and the kids at the Boys and Girls Club, and then being on the staff with them. Just felt like that was the right thing for me.
Yeah, so the kids left a place in your heart.
Oh, yeah, and I see some of them now, and they're grown-ups, and they have kids, and they talk about when they were at the club, and everybody was scared of Mr. Anthony, but you were just fair, so I always try to be fair with the kids. And, you see them in the store, and it's kind of like they recognize you and you recognize them, and it's a great feeling.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And being able to give back to your community, being that mentor, I see that, you providing that advice to those that are, really here, know what they have gone through, or realizing, what are some situations that they may be facing here in the community.
They might need some help with. We do a football camp. Ron and I do a football camp, and it's free for the kids. And, I always tell people, I said, we bring them in with the football, but the most important thing is we have guest speakers every day. and they talk to them about being a good person. They talk to them about education, staying away from drugs, staying out there, preparing for life after sports is over, because only a small amount of kids are going to make it to the NFL, to the Major League Baseball, to whatever sport that they're really interested in. So preparing themselves if they don't make it. And then we talk to them about preparing themselves if they make it, what happens afterwards. So because you can't play forever.
Right,
So,
right. So do you have that? Is that happening now? Is that something that happened in the past?
We just finished a football camp. We do
great.
2 of them a year, and we just finished those last month, and they went good. We had over 400 kids sign up. So
wow, that's wonderful.
yeah.
That's so exciting.
And it's totally free for the kids, so that's what's great about it.
So where can people look up to find more information about that
On the
camp?
Boys and Girls Club, Monterey County's website, just go to events, and then it'll be on there when it's getting close to time to start.
Okay. Well, so sharing a little bit of what you're doing off the field, is there anything else now in the life of a retired NFL football player, what you enjoy doing?
Well, I just enjoy being at home with my wife and our dogs. You know, it's relaxing. We go out and we walk a lot. Haven't been out to the golf range as much as I like. That's something I like to do with some of my friends. We go out and play golf, but been busy working with the embroidery shop, so haven't had a lot of time to do that. But I'm just kind of a homebody type of person, you know. Don't like to travel. My wife and son, they like to travel, do all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I'll see you guys when you get back home. But no, I just like being around my friends and being at home.
Yeah.
Don't do a lot of stuff.
And you lit up so much when you were talking about, just slow life, being able to relax and enjoy the process now, being here in Salinas.
Because you talk about the transition and, transitioning from having to travel so much when you're playing professional sports to being able to come home and just not have to go anywhere, not have to do anything. And that was the kind of person that I am. I just like being at home. Like I said, I'll go back to Texas A&M for a reunion. I've gone back to Philadelphia only once for a reunion. So I don't, even travel for those kind of events a lot. I don't go to like professional games hardly ever. Went to the Dodgers-Giants baseball game a couple weeks ago with my friends from the 6th grade and junior high school. We get together and we have breakfast about every 5 or 6 weeks. And that's the kind of stuff I like to do.
Yeah, so staying connected, being surrounded by those and resting. That's so important as we're talking about athletes and the importance of, all these pieces that help.
One of the things that I look at, I watch football. I love to watch college football more than anything. And it's just so much different than when we were playing, because now you have all these kids that they're pretty much out self-promoting themselves all the time. And we didn't do that. We just went, we practiced, you played hard, and you hope that you were able to, be a great team and you were able to move to that next level. And now these guys, they come in and it's kind of like, okay, let me get my podcast going. Let me get this Instagram going. I don't even know how to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just totally different. And, you just hope that they're able to stay focused to where they can go out on the field and perform like they're supposed to and not get injuries because they're not mentally into the game, because they're thinking about all that outside noise that's going on right now. So to me, that's like one of the biggest difference today in the world of college.
Those distractions, like you were describing so clearly. And so as we close our podcast, here, because you have had the experience, and so that those that are listening are able to really listen to, even though it is different than it was when you were playing, it's still that information that, those that are listening and starting or, in their career as an athlete, being able to really take those words of wisdom and understand, what it takes to get to that level. And hopefully that's the hope of the podcast, just gain awareness of, any piece of advice. So I like to leave the question, if you only knew what you know now, back then when you were a young athlete and going through, that career turning point.
Well, it's funny because one of my teammates from Texas A&M, we also were teammates at Philadelphia for a year. Thomas Sanders we've had that question asked of each other. It's like, man, if we only knew what we knew, now, if we knew this back then. And it's like, there's so much that we didn't know. And how do you get prepared to deal with the money when you come from no money? Now all of a sudden you're dealing with large amounts of money, and how to prepare yourself, because that money's not going to last forever. It's been, almost 40 years or so, since I played professional football. Money was good back then, but it's nowhere like it is now. And, you have to prepare to be living and raising a family. So if we knew more about how to financially be set, that we know now that we didn't know then, because we thought about, man, we could have invested in property back there. Man, we could have did this. But it was just like you were just focused on trying to make the team and trying to do the best you could. And that's just, personally from myself, because like I said, we came up where, I came up where we were moving all the time because we didn't own any property. So it wasn't like, oh, I know how to buy property. Oh, I got a big checking account. I know how to deal with all that. You were learning as you went. So if you were able to look back and go, man, I could have did that. Man, I could have did that. But I think, being that the kind of person I was, I never did anything extravagant. I was just like, nope, let's get a house. Okay, you got a car. I don't need a big $200,000 car or nothing like that. I just need a car that gets me from here to there. So that's one of the things that I do look back on and say, I always been the same person. I didn't say, oh, I'm making this amount of money, so let's spend that much money as fast as we can. It was like, no, let's be focused on what we need and what we don't need. So that's one thing that I would definitely look at, is like, if I would have known a little bit more about investing and stuff like that. But you always, no matter who you are, have to be focused on what you want to do. And you have to take those challenges when you're competing against other people. So just always giving that best, shot that you can, that best effort to be the best, player that you can be, and then being the best person that you can be to people.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for those words of advice. Hopefully someone will definitely resonate with those words. Stay humble, stay focused, and, invest, be able to know what, listening to these people that are here on the podcast. I really appreciate, especially your conversation, being honored to have this time, taking the time out of your day, being able to sit here and really get to know you. It was such a pleasure and honor. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for having
me. I appreciate you invited me to do your show. Like I said, this is the first one I've ever done. So, I've been asked to do a couple of different things, and just kind of like, that's not really what I do. But glad I could help you with this one and come in for this one.
Yeah, it was an honor. Thank you so much, Mr. Toney. I hope to see you soon and on the range.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully we'll see you out there.
Yeah, definitely.